The day they buried my father, I knew I was next. Not in the literal sense, of course. But when you grow up in a family like mine, death isn't always delivered in the traditional way. It can arrive quietly, like a dinner knife slipped under your ribs by someone who shares your last name. Or worse, it can come in whispers, inheritance disputes, poisoned loyalties, rewritten wills. I wasn't ready for any of it, and yet I'd been groomed for it all along. My name is Evelyn Whitmore, youngest daughter of the Whitmore dynasty. If you've heard of us, it's probably from the headlines. Prominent Whitmore patriarch dies in tragic fall, or Whitmore fortune faces controversy after death. Those were the kinder ones. On the surface, we were royalty in our own right land, old money, an ancestral estate that reeked of prestige and secrets. But beneath it all, rot. So much rot. And I was the quiet one. The soft-spoken shadow who drifted around the edges of family portraits, who never raised her voice, who let her siblings shine while I remained cloaked in invisibility. They liked me that way, pliable, forgettable. But they forgot something important about shadows. They always know where the light is coming from. And they never forget who cast them. The day of my father's funeral was a fog-drenched Tuesday. As the coffin lowered into the earth, and I stared into the polished wood that now held the only man who'd ever tried to protect me, I felt it. A shift, like the earth beneath my feet had decided it owed me no loyalty. I was alone. Or so I thought. Because buried inside that coffin, along with my father, was the first piece of a truth that would unravel everything. A secret that would pit me against my own blood. And the beginning of a story in which I stopped being their victim and became their reckoning. The Whitmore manor hadn't changed. Not the towering iron gates that clanked open like they were yawning after a long slumber, nor the ivy that strangled the stone walls in a slow, possessive crawl. The windows still watched like silent sentinels. Tall, cold, judgmental. I hadn't set foot here in 3 years. Even as the gravel crunched under the tires of my hired car, I felt my stomach coil with memories. That house had watched me cry. It had watched me bleed. It had learned how to stay silent in all the right places. I wasn't ready, but I had no choice. My mother had summoned us all to discuss the estate. Her words, not mine. A week after the funeral. 1 week after I'd stood at the graveside while my brother Julian comforted mourners like a seasoned politician, and my sister Charlotte held my hand just tight enough to hurt. Back then, I told myself they were grieving in their own way. Now, I know better. Evelyn. Charlotte was the first to greet me at the door. Tall, elegant, and groomed to perfection, like grief was just another aesthetic to style. She wore black like it was tailored for her soul. She kissed my cheek in a way that felt like an inspection. "I'm glad you came." I offered a polite smile. I didn't realize staying away was an option. Her gaze faltered, only slightly. "You know Mother?" "Yes, I did." Patricia Whitmore, our mother, wasn't the sort of woman you refused. She didn't raise children. She curated heirs. To her, we were assets in a legacy portfolio. Julian, the golden boy and executor of the estate. Charlotte, the poised socialite, always ready to smile for the camera. And me? I was the crack in the foundation. The one they spoke of in past tense. Mother emerged from the drawing room in a perfume cloud that hit like formaldehyde. Her eyes, sharp, glassy, gray, landed on me like a predator taking inventory. "You've put on weight." I smiled. "And you haven't aged a day." She didn't blink, just turned and walked away. The meeting was held in the study, surrounded by oil paintings of dead men who once owned our name. My father's leather chair sat empty, still draped in the burgundy scarf he wore in winter. No one mentioned it. Victor Hale, our family lawyer, stood near the fireplace, shuffling through a stack of legal folders. He was as neat as ever, hair slicked, suit tight, voice syrupy smooth. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "I know emotions are still raw. Cut to the part where you tell us who gets what," Julian interrupted, lounging with the smug ease of a man certain of his inheritance. Victor cleared his throat. Your father left a will. Several, actually. But the most recent one is unconventional. Mother's fingers tensed on the armrest of her chair. Victor opened a folder. The estate, the manor, the company shares, he left control of all of it to Evelyn. Silence. Not just quiet, dead silence. Then, "You're joking," Julian said, his voice brittle with laughter he didn't feel. "I'm afraid not," Victor replied. He signed the documents 6 weeks before his death. All properly notarized. "Why?" Charlotte asked, her voice eerily calm. "Why would he do that?" Victor hesitated. He didn't say. But he asked that Evelyn be given a letter. Privately. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until he handed it to me. Thick parchment. Sealed with my father's crest. As I slid it into my coat pocket, I felt everyone's eyes on me. Julian's voice turned venomous. This isn't happening. But it was. And I had no idea why. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my childhood room, the same wallpaper, the same creaking floors, and opened the letter. My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, then you now own everything. And with that power comes a danger I can no longer shield you from. They will come for you. Not just for the inheritance, but for the truth. There is a secret hidden within these walls. One I discovered too late. I leave you with 2 pieces of advice. 1. Trust no one who shares your name. 2. Look behind the portrait in the study. I always knew you were the only one strong enough to survive this family. Now, I need you to outlive them. Dad, I stared at the letter until the words blurred. Trust no one who shares your name. And so, at 3 in the morning, I crept barefoot through the manor halls, past ancestral paintings that watched me with oil-painted judgment. In the study, the fireplace still smelled like him. Smoke and pipe tobacco. Behind the large portrait of my great-grandfather, I found it, a metal panel hidden in the wall. I pressed it open. Inside, a safe. Unlocked. Inside the safe, a journal. My father's journal. The journal was bound in cracked leather, brittle at the seams like it had been opened and closed too many times in secret. Inside, my father's handwriting filled the pages with an urgency I never saw in him while he was alive. Each sentence looked like it had been written in a hurry, like he was racing a clock he knew he couldn't outrun. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you're not safe. That was how it began. I didn't leave my room the next day. I pretended to be sick. My siblings didn't knock. My mother didn't care. But I read every page. My father had been paranoid, watching, documenting, compiling notes on family finances, property records, business deals, and people. People close to the family. He wrote about threats, ones he couldn't prove. Strange meetings between Julian and Victor. Conversations cut short when he walked into rooms. Mentions of the real will being tampered with. But most damning of all were the entries about Mira. Mira Stone had been my friend since we were kids. The daughter of one of our longtime housekeepers, she was practically raised in the manor. She was my only connection to warmth in this place. She left 3 months ago, no warning, no goodbye. The staff said she'd gotten a new job overseas. My father didn't believe it. Mira knew something. She told me she overheard Charlotte and Victor discussing a transfer, money being moved quietly, papers forged. She asked questions. The next day, she vanished. I put the journal down, heart pounding. Why would they lie about Mira leaving? Why hide it? Unless they had something to do with her disappearance. I decided I needed answers. The staff quarters had been locked since Mira left, but I still remembered where she kept her things. That night, I waited until the halls went quiet. I slipped out again, this time carrying a small flashlight and wearing shoes that didn't squeak. The house creaked with every step I took. I wasn't paranoid. Not yet. But something about the air felt heavier than usual, like it was holding its breath. Myra's room was almost exactly as she'd left it, bed made, closet empty, but her small wooden chest still sat beneath the floorboards she once showed me. I pulled it out. Inside, a locket, a notebook, and an envelope marked with one word, "If something happens to me." I didn't open the letter. Not yet, because behind me I heard something move. A floorboard creaked. I spun around, but no one was there. The next morning, I woke to raised voices downstairs. "Where is it?" Julian barked. "You said it would be easy." Victor's tone was tense. It was, until the will changed everything. They didn't know I was listening from the hallway. My stomach dropped as I realized they were arguing about me. "She found the journal, didn't she?" Charlotte's voice. It's the only thing that explains her sudden confidence. "She doesn't know what to do with it," Julian said. "She's weak." She always was. Weak. That word echoed like a taunt. They didn't see me as a threat. They never had. Good. Let them believe that. Let them relax. Let them lie. Because I was about to start playing a different game. That evening, I opened Myra's letter. "Eve, if you're reading this, then I was right to be scared. I think something bad is happening." I overheard Victor telling Charlotte to sign something before the end of September. I couldn't make out everything, but I think it's about the trust fund. I'm scared. If I disappear, promise me you won't let them silence you too. I clutched the letter so tight it crumpled. The date she mentioned, September 29th. The day before she supposedly quit. She didn't leave. She was removed. And I was next. The journal had one final note tucked in the back, written in a hand shakier than the rest. "Evelyn, when you find this, don't go to the police. They won't believe you. Not until you have proof. There's a ledger hidden in the wine cellar. It ties everything together. Find it, then decide who you want to be." That was the night I stopped being the quiet daughter. I wasn't ready to be a warrior yet, but I could be a hunter. And the Whitmore family was full of prey. The wine cellar had always been off limits. Not officially, but in that unspoken Whitmore way. My father was the only one who had the keys. He claimed it was for inventory reasons, too many rare bottles, too much risk of theft. Now I understood what he was really protecting. I waited until just after midnight to go. The house was silent again, but this time it didn't feel like peace. It felt like tension, like the air was listening. I used the master key I'd swiped from Victor's office drawer earlier that day. He never locked it. He still thought I was the girl who couldn't open a drawer without asking permission. He was wrong. The door to the cellar opened with a slow groan. The air inside was cold and damp, with the scent of mold and old cork. Dust clung to the wooden stairs like skin. I descended one creaking step at a time, flashlight in hand, my breath visible in the chill. The ledger wasn't hard to find. It was wrapped in oilskin and hidden behind a false panel behind the oldest rack, my father's favorite hiding spot. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. Inside were pages of transactions, amounts too large, too irregular, to be legal. Money moved through shell companies. Land sales made under fake names. My siblings' signatures next to quiet company dissolutions. Even Mother's name appeared next to a discreet asset transfer to an offshore account. But what chilled me most was the name I found in the final pages, Mira Stone. And next to it, asset containment, $250,000. Victor to oversee. I dropped the book like it burned me. What did asset containment mean? Why was her name listed like a liability? My father hadn't just suspected something. He'd known. I barely made it back to my room without falling apart. I stayed up the rest of the night reading every word, documenting what I could. I made copies with the little portable scanner I'd brought from my apartment. Thank God for paranoia. I emailed one to myself, another to an encrypted cloud drive, just in case. Because when the truth comes out in a family like mine, people don't just lose trust. They vanish. The next morning, I played along, ate breakfast with Mother and Charlotte like everything was fine. Julian was already gone, business meetings, they said. I wondered which bank he was laundering his conscience through today. But then something happened I didn't expect. Charlotte slipped into my room after lunch. She closed the door quietly behind her, eyes darting toward the hallway. I need to talk to you, she whispered. I stiffened. About what? Her mask cracked, just a flicker. I think they killed him, she said. My blood froze. What? I think they killed Dad. Not directly, but they pushed him. Over and over until he had nothing left but paranoia. I think he knew about the offshore deals, about Mira. I think he threatened to expose them. I studied her, searching for lies. Then why are you telling me this? Because they're watching me too now. I've seen the looks Mother gives me when I ask questions. Julian told me to stop digging. He said I was getting emotional. Her voice dropped. Victor threatened me. My walls didn't fall, but a door creaked open inside me, just enough to let something else in. If you're serious, I said slowly, we can bring them down. She gave a bitter laugh. You think I haven't tried? Then she handed me something. A flash drive. This is everything I've been able to gather. Emails, call logs, bank receipts. Keep it hidden. Don't trust anyone. I took it. For the first time since my father died, I saw fear in my sister's eyes. And maybe something else. Guilt. That night, I went back to the journal. My father had made a final entry just 4 days before his death. I caught Julian in my study. He tried to lie, said he was looking for a file. But he was searching for the journal, I know it. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. He knew. He didn't fall down those stairs. He was pushed. In the days that followed, everything moved quickly. Julian came back and cornered me in the garden. You've been snooping, he said. No more charm. Just teeth. You sound nervous, I replied, keeping my voice calm. Like someone with something to hide. He stepped closer. You're not built for this, Evelyn. All your reading and whispering won't save you when the wolves come. I'm not afraid of wolves, I said. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The storm was building. Secrets didn't just live in this house. They grew here, fed by silence, protected by tradition, watered with fear. But now the roots were cracking, and I was holding the axe. It started with a knock at Victor's door. Not mine. Victor Hale, our family's legal lifeline, the man who had drafted nearly every Whitmore document for 3 decades, was the first target. Not by me, by the law. I had mailed an anonymous tip to a journalist I used to tutor in college. She owed me. I sent her redacted copies from the ledger, selected excerpts from my father's journal, and the financial spreadsheet Charlotte gave me. I knew she couldn't resist. I asked for one thing in return. Delay publishing. Give the police time to move. They did. Victor was arrested 2 days later. Tax fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. But those were just the surface-level charges. He looked stunned when they pulled him from his office, like he still thought he could talk his way out of it. He tried to reach out. I didn't answer. The house changed after that. Mother barely left her suite. The staff whispered. Even the walls seemed to listen more carefully. The Whitmore name wasn't whispered in reverence anymore, it was muttered with suspicion. But the real crack came when Julian stormed into the drawing room, a copy of the morning paper crumpled in his fist. Whitmore family estate under federal scrutiny, legal advisor arrested in ongoing investigation. Possible financial misconduct. You did this, he spat. I handed over evidence of a crime, I replied. He laughed, a short, humorless sound. You think this makes you powerful? You think you've won something. I think it's a start. He crossed the room in 2 long strides. You don't know what you're playing with. That ledger was part of something bigger. This goes beyond our family. I froze. What does that mean? But Julian didn't answer. He just stared at me like I'd become something he didn't recognize. Or maybe something he feared. You're not going to make it through this, he said finally. None of us will. That night, Charlotte came to me again. This time, shaking. They came to me at work, she said. 2 men in suits. Not police. Not government. They knew about the ledger. They said if I didn't stay quiet, they'd make me disappear like Mira. I grabbed her wrist. Charlotte, what were you and Julian doing? She looked like she might break. You don't understand. We didn't just forge documents. We moved people, transferred employees between shell companies. Some of those companies didn't exist. Mira found that out. She threatened to go public. Julian said he'd handle it. My voice was barely a whisper. What did he do? Charlotte shook her head. I don't know. But she didn't leave. I know that now. The ledger hadn't just been a record of stolen wealth. It was a map of how far our family had reached into things it should have never touched. I knew what I had to do. I had to find Mira. If she was alive. If she wasn't. I had to make sure her story didn't die in silence. I went back to the one place I hadn't searched. My father's private greenhouse. He had it built for my mother decades ago, but she'd never stepped foot inside after their 3rd anniversary. Too humid, too alive, she said. After his death, it had been sealed. Forgotten. The lock had rusted. The door creaked open like it was gasping for breath. Inside, plants had grown wild. Nature untamed. Orchids reached out like claws. Ivy strangled the supports. And in the center, where his old workbench sat, I found the final clue. A burner phone. Wrapped in plastic. Taped beneath the bench. Its battery was dead. I charged it using a portable charger and prayed the contents hadn't been wiped. One message. Unsaved number. Mira is safe. For now. But they're watching. Do not trust Julian. D.D. Daniel Holt. My father's oldest friend. Ex-business partner. Disgraced. Disappeared years ago. The man we all assumed had betrayed the family. The man my father secretly reconnected with before he died. I didn't know what was real anymore. My father had hidden more than I ever guessed. My siblings had sunk deeper than I imagined. And someone, somewhere, was still watching me. Because later that night, my room was broken into, and the journal was gone. The room had been ransacked with surgical precision. Not chaotic like a robbery, methodical. They didn't touch the valuables. They didn't even disturb the clothes. Just drawers opened, papers disturbed, books shifted an inch or two. Enough that I noticed, not enough that anyone else would. But the journal was gone. So was Charlotte's flash drive. And my laptop had been wiped. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. Instead, I sat on the bed and stared at the broken lock on my door. Whoever did this wanted me to know. This wasn't a warning. This was a message. I was getting too close. And they wanted to remind me how easy it would be to erase me too. But they underestimated me again. Because I hadn't trusted myself with the only copy. The journalist I contacted, Maya Chin, had everything I gave her still stored on her secure server. I'd sent backups of the key files to a hidden cloud drive. One I'd named after a book only Mira and I used to talk about as kids. I'd planned for loss. What I hadn't planned for was betrayal from within the house. Because that night, Charlotte was gone. She didn't leave a note. No message. Just vanished. Her room had been cleared out. Victor was in jail. Julian was unraveling. Mother was silent. And now my only possible ally had disappeared. Again. I didn't cry. I burned. The next day, I went to see someone I never thought I'd face again. Daniel Holt. He lived 2 hours outside the city, in a ramshackle cabin tucked into the woods like it had grown out of them. I only found him because of the burner phone and a return address stamped faintly on a forgotten envelope. He opened the door with a shotgun in his hand and suspicion in his eyes. I'm Evelyn Whitmore, I said. I know who you are, he replied. I just don't know which side you're on. I'm on the side of the truth. He didn't lower the gun, but he let me in. Daniel was a wreck of a man, beard down to his collarbone, eyes bloodshot, hands that trembled from old guilt and too much bourbon. But his mind was sharp. He'd been in hiding ever since the Whitmores threw him under the bus. My father's betrayal had been a fabrication, a scapegoat to protect the rest of the family's dealings. I never stole from your father, Daniel told me. I protected him. We found out the others, your siblings, mostly Julian, were using our real estate company to funnel money into private accounts. When your father confronted them, they turned on us both. Why didn't you go public? I tried, but your family had already poisoned my name. No one listens to the fallen, Evelyn. They only cheer for the ones still standing. I nodded slowly. Then help me bring them down. He studied me for a long moment. You remind me of your father. Toward the end. That's not a compliment where I'm from. No, he said, but maybe it should be. Daniel still had one piece of the puzzle left, Myra's location. She was alive, living under a different name in a small town across the state line. She'd been hiding for months, smuggled out of the estate by my father and Daniel after she'd blown the whistle to him. She wanted to stay, Daniel said, but he convinced her to leave. Said she'd be safer far away. She didn't even get to say goodbye. Tears stung my eyes, but I kept them in. I had no room for sorrow, only resolve. I visited Mira the next morning. When she saw me, her face turned ghost white. But then, her lip quivered, and she stepped forward. We didn't speak right away. We just hugged. For a long time. And in that silence, I finally felt something crack inside me, grief, guilt, relief, everything that had been buried under the armor I'd worn for weeks. I thought you were dead, I whispered. I thought you'd never come, she said. Mira told me everything. How Victor had threatened her. How Julian had offered her money to disappear. How my father had hidden her in a staff car and sent her to Daniel. How she'd watched the news from afar, afraid every day that someone would find her. But most importantly, how she'd kept records. Emails, voice memos, a full backup of conversations with Victor, Julian, even Charlotte. All stored on an encrypted drive. I asked her for a copy. She handed it over without hesitation. I trust you, she said. Now I had everything. The ledger, the drive, Mira, even Daniel. But most of all, I had the truth. And the world was about to hear it. I didn't go home after seeing Mira. There was nothing left there for me, not safety, not loyalty, not even nostalgia. That house had been a mausoleum since my father died. No more pretending it was anything else. Instead, I went to Maya. My journalist friend had been waiting. When she saw the new files the backup Mira gave me, the voice recordings, the dates and logs from Daniel, her jaw clenched. Evelyn, she said slowly, this isn't just family drama anymore. I know, I replied. It's organized financial crime. Labor fraud, threats, possibly murder. She looked up. This could bury them. That's the plan. It took 2 days to organize the story, to cross-check every piece of data, to corroborate witness statements anonymously. Myra's recordings included damning audio, Julian pressuring her to sign an NDA, Victor warning her she was being watched. My father's journal, the forensic accountant's analysis, Daniel's affidavit. The story was airtight. And on the 3rd morning, it dropped. Front page. The fall of the Whitmores. Inside, a legacy of greed, threats, and silence. Everything exploded. By noon, my phone had over 200 messages. By evening, the news had reached every major network. Julian was arrested trying to board a private jet. Charlotte, wherever she had gone, released a public statement claiming she had no knowledge of the full extent of the fraud. Mother stayed silent, issuing her denials through a lawyer. Victor's bail was revoked. Every shell company linked to the Whitmores was frozen pending federal investigation. Mira was granted whistleblower protection. Daniel's name was cleared. And me? I was everywhere. The fallen daughter, the traitor, the survivor. But victory is never clean. Especially not in blood-soaked families like mine. The first sign that something was wrong came with a package. No sender. Just a plain brown envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a single photograph of me and Mira, taken that morning, outside a coffee shop. The back read, "You're not done yet." And neither are we. I showed it to Maya, to Daniel, even the police. They said it could be an old enemy, a last-gasp intimidation tactic. But my instincts screamed louder. This wasn't from Julian. Or Victor. This was someone still out there. Someone I hadn't unmasked yet. And when I reviewed one of the recordings again, listening to Myra's voice tremble under Julian's threats, I caught something I hadn't noticed before. A third voice. A woman's. Whispering something. Don't worry. We'll handle her. And Mira, sobbing, whispering back, Please, Charlotte. Please don't let them hurt me. The world blurred. I'd trusted her. I'd grieved for her. And all this time, she had been the one helping Mira vanish, not out of mercy, but to control her. She disappeared so she wouldn't go down with the ship. Let me do the dirty work. Let me get my hands bloody while she scrubbed hers clean. She played both sides. And now she was watching me burn from the shadows. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I packed a bag. And I went hunting, because if there was one thing left of the Whitmore legacy, it was unfinished business. I tracked Charlotte down through a corporate filing under a pseudonym. Alara Holdings. New company. Clean name. Clean books. Clean image. But the signature on the incorporation paperwork? The same slight, tilted C she always used on birthday cards. She was hiding in plain sight. And she hadn't run. She was building something new from the ashes I left behind. And she thought no one would notice. I found her in Boston. Sleek high-rise. Black glass. Expensive taste. The kind of building designed to keep people like me out. But I walked right in, wearing my father's watch and the sharpest smile I had. I told the receptionist I had a meeting with Charlotte Whitmore. Used my real name. Waited in the lobby like the trap I was. She came down herself. And when she saw me, her whole face twitched. Just once. You shouldn't be here, she said. You should have stayed gone, I replied. She took me to her office, floor-to-ceiling windows, orchids in glass vases, the Whitmore logo long gone. She poured 2 drinks. I didn't touch mine. So, she said, sinking into the chair across from me, Are you here to kill me? No, I said. But you might wish I had when I'm done. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You figured it out. All of it. She didn't deny it. You helped Mira disappear, I said. But not to protect her. You wanted her quiet. Julian wanted to buy her off. Victor wanted her gone, but you wanted control. She was dangerous. She was right. Charlotte leaned forward. And what, Evelyn? You think you're the Avenger now? The brave little sister who saved the day? I think I'm the one who didn't sell her soul for a trust fund. Her jaw clenched. You were always naive. No, I said. I was just raised by wolves and forgot I had claws too. Then I laid out the final move. Maya had copies of everything. But I held the original recording, Charlotte's voice, whispering assurances while Mira cried, promising to make it disappear. I held a statement from Mira, ready for court. And I had the financial trail, Charlotte's name all over the post-collapse asset shifts. She'd planned this for months. To disappear, wait out the storm, and rebuild alone. Not anymore. I gave her a choice. Confess. Step down. Publicly. Or this all goes to court. You won't get bail. Charlotte didn't blink. You'd really take down the last of us? I stared her down. You took yourself down. I'm just flipping the lights on. She called her lawyer. Held a press conference 3 days later. Resigned from every board. Admitted to obstructing justice, financial misconduct, and suppressing Myra's whistleblowing. No spin. No excuses. Just a statement. I am not innocent. I helped protect what should have burned long ago. And now I answer for it. She was arrested that night. And me? I walked out of that high-rise building as the last Whitmore standing. Not the richest. Not the most powerful. But the only one left with a soul intact. The media tried to label me hero, victim, whistleblower, traitor. But I wasn't any of those. I was Evelyn Whitmore, the daughter of a man they broke, the sister of 3 snakes, the girl they underestimated, and the woman who watched an empire fall, brick by blood-soaked brick. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks into a room and tells the truth so loud it makes the walls collapse. I watched the Whitmore empire crumble from the sidelines. Not with glee, not with pride, but with a quiet, humbling relief that came from knowing the fight was finally over. The trials went on for months. Public testimony, legal battles, the whispers of the press following every misstep, every piece of newly uncovered evidence. Julian was sentenced to prison for his role in orchestrating the fraud, but not before he tried one last desperate move, offering me a share of the remaining family wealth, promising to protect me from the fallout. I turned him down. Victor's trial was brutal. The media painted him as the mastermind, the father figure who'd pulled the strings. He was convicted on all charges and would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. But I could see the emptiness in his eyes during the hearings. The man who once believed he could get away with anything was now reduced to a shadow of his former self. Charlotte, too, faded away into obscurity. Her confession had been an act of self-preservation, but her name was mud, no matter how much money she threw at her legal team. She disappeared into the anonymity she craved, her face no longer gracing the headlines. And me? I stayed out of the spotlight. I let the world turn its judgment elsewhere. The day I finally walked away from it all wasn't a grand gesture. No dramatic speech. No fanfare. It was a quiet afternoon, in the back corner of a small cafe in a town where no one knew my name. Maya had been right about one thing. The press would forget me in time. I'd made my peace with that. It wasn't fame or fortune I'd been after. It was something far more elusive. Peace. I sat in that cafe, the sun filtering through the windows, warming the space around me. The newspaper I'd been reading lay forgotten on the table. The cup of coffee had gone cold. But I didn't mind. I was no longer in a rush. The road ahead was mine now. I didn't know what my future held. I didn't have the luxury of certainty anymore. But for the first time in years, I felt free. I stayed in the small town for a while, just long enough to breathe, to exist without the weight of the Whitmore name dragging me down. I worked at a local nonprofit, helping young women who'd suffered abuse and betrayal, much like I had. It was hard work, but it was real. Sometimes, the old demons came back to haunt me. The nightmares of my father's final days. The memories of Myra's disappearance. The cold betrayal that ran through my bloodline. But when I woke up, I reminded myself of one simple truth. I had survived. And I was finally whole. Months passed. The cases surrounding the Whitmores wound down, and my name began to fade from the public's memory. The world moved on, as it always does. But for me, it felt like a new chapter was beginning. Then one day, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name, written in a hand I hadn't seen in years. It was from Mira. Evelyn, I've been watching you. I know you've rebuilt your life. I've kept my distance, kept myself hidden. You were right, everything you said. I wish I had been strong enough to stand by you earlier. But I hope you know deep down that what you did wasn't just for us, it was for everyone who was silenced by them. I owe you more than words. You saved me, and now I'm going to try to save myself. I'm living in a small town now, not far from you. I've got a new name, a new life. I don't expect you to come find me. I just want you to know that I'm free. Thank you, Evelyn. Always. Mira. I held the letter for a long time. For the first time, I let myself feel something I hadn't in so long: hope. Real hope. Hope for the future. Hope for freedom. I didn't need to find Mira. She had already found herself. She was out there, somewhere, living the life she had earned. And as for me, I was no longer defined by the blood that ran through my veins. I was no longer the daughter of Victor Whitmore, the sister of Julian, the forgotten one. I was Evelyn. Just Evelyn. And that was enough. As the sun set on that quiet town, I stood by the window, watching the fading light, knowing that the past was behind me. The world was full of endless possibilities now. I could be anyone. I could do anything, The ashes of my family's empire had settled, and from them I would rise,